Hi, everyone. We've reached the end of the month, so we're going to recap some of the great conversations that have been going on in the Humanizing Work community. If you've had a busy month and haven't been able to stay as engaged with the community as you'd like, this recap will serve as a quick highlight reel.
We'll link to the original conversation in the description so you can go deeper on any topics that spark your interest. Here are the highlights for February 2022.
Normally, on the first Friday of the month, we gather our conference alumni for 1 hour of conversation, but this month we ran a one-day virtual conference instead. It was wonderful to reconnect with old and new friends, and highlights included deep dives into topics like culture signals and risk management, in addition to the usual enjoyment of community and learning groups, and things like spontaneous virtual line dancing. We are planning with so much excitement to resume our annual in-person gathering this year, so stay tuned for details.
Next up is our Scrum Master community, and this week we were talking about facilitating sprint reviews in February. So we shared a new model that we've been working on about a framework, a skeleton, if you will, for facilitating sprint reviews. Because we've noticed that there's a tension in the goals and the levels of detail that people want out of a sprint review. So we've built a model to address those tensions. And in a bit of a twist, we decided to use the model itself to run the meeting, which was fun, especially the moment when it dawned on everybody that that's what we were doing. Kind of like yeah, I see what you're doing there. So we learned a lot about ourselves and about how we facilitate and how to use this model. And during the session, we pointed out several scenarios where even we weren't sure what to do or struggled to do it well. We got some great feedback on the model, both how it was useful for sprint reviews and, in a surprise to us, how it might be useful in other meetings and ways we could make it even better. A few key points from this session is there was a great discussion around situations where the team might not have as much trust with one another and how that can influence the goal of the meeting. We also talked about how to focus during the demo and the things around it, and trying to make that a really tight link and fast feedback loop. And then also talked about the order of the steps in the model that we shared and how there are some psychological and emotional jobs that are key to defining how you would go through it and how much time you would spend in each section, and in some cases, what order you might do it. And then we did get into a bit of a debrief on just the challenges and pitfalls of facilitating anything, because we were facilitating through this model, and it's always fun to kind of pull the curtain back and say, here's what we're thinking and what we're struggling with as we try to use this model that we've developed.
All right, moving on to the third Friday where our product owner community meets. And in February, we talked about what do you do when the product owner role gets split. Of course, in Scrum, the product owner role is designed to be one person end to end, from customer understanding to collaborating with a team to build things. And often it gets split. So we explored why that happens, some of the side effects it produces, and then we talked about a way of modeling a shared role so you can get clear on what's mine and what's yours and how do we share decision making and responsibility. Essentially a combination of the 7 levels of delegation and our PO board. And combining those two gets you clarity about shared responsibilities and how to do that effectively. It was really good discussion and practice on those models. So if you're in a situation where you have somebody with a product manager or BA title, somebody else with a product owner title, this would be a good session to look back at.
And then our fourth Friday is our leadership community. And in this session, we originally planned just to share an additional model for how to think of adult stages of development called the Leadership Development Framework. But as we started preparing for this session, we realized that there's another thing around this, which is how we tell stories. And I wanted to share my experience with that model as part of a story of my own growth. And as I put that together as a way to share the model, I thought, there's another thing here, which is that for leaders, one of the key jobs and one of the key determinants of the success of a leader is how successfully they tell meaningful stories about change, about vision, about what we're up to. And so we decided to focus about half of our session on how we tell stories as leaders. And we put together a little lightweight framework for how good stories tend to go with, something that happens, and then the way we think about it changes a little bit, and then we change our behavior, and then there's some outcome, just a standard story arc, and had people practice sharing times that they've grown, times that they've changed through that lightweight framework. So it was a way to practice telling stories, and we learned a ton about each other through that, and also learned a little bit about the importance of that ability to frame any change, any goal through a story. And then we did share a little bit about that leadership development framework towards the end, and I shared, my kind of surprising results in that and what I've been doing about that.
If you're already a member of one of these communities of practice, you can access links to the recordings in the community space. These communities are made up of alumni of our courses and of our annual conference. And if that's you and you're not already part of one and want to get in on the discussions as they happen, reach out and we'll get you the info to join one or more of these communities.